Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for this Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. It's 9:04 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Vice Chair of the Board. Our Chair, Commissioner Mejia, will be here presently. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. His left, County Manager Mira Chavez. To my right, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. We have public virtual attendance. You can follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. You can also join conference call by calling 360-252-9020. The PIN is 1234. We're scheduled to noon. We will take a break in the middle, probably about 10 or 15 minutes, but we'll kick things off with item number 1 on the morning's agenda, which is COVID-19 update. I'm looking at the big board. I see Interim Public Health Director Kurt Harden.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Interim Public Health Director. The update for COVID as of today, May 24th. Total cases in Thurston County, and these numbers are as of May 22nd, 50,195 as reported by the state. Unfortunately, Thurston County deaths as reported by the state are 423. Our 14-day per 100,000 case rate is 430.2. That's an increase. And to give some perspective, it was last week, it was 369.4, 2 weeks ago, 286.9, and 3 weeks ago, 211.7. So it is on an increase and it's rising. Hospitalization data is as of May 22nd as well. Total hospitalizations since February 2020 is 2,331. Currently, we have 18 patients in Thurston County hospitals with COVID. And 0 suspected. Some perspective on that, last week we had 15 patients and 2 weeks ago we had 9 patients. So that's on an increase as well. The number of patients on ventilators is 1. Our ICU available capacity is 4 adults and our acute bed availability capacity is 22 adults. And so I'm going to go into congregate care now. Since the start of the pandemic, we've had 209 congregate care outbreaks. Currently, we have 21 congregate care outbreaks ongoing. The vaccination status in Thurston County, this is all of as of May 21st. There's been 536,848 doses administered in Thurston County to date. Percent of people initiating vaccine in the county is 72.6%. Percent of people fully vaccinated in the county is 66%. The percent of people initiating vaccine who are age 16 and older is 82.5%. And the percent of people fully vaccinated age 16 and older is 75%. The percentage of the population initiating vaccine age 5 and older is 76.8%. And the percent of population fully vaccinated age 5 and older is 69.8%. And the percentage of eligible people receiving a booster shot age 12 and older is 59%. Some additional items, vaccination status. We will do a vaccine clinic at the Yelm Community Center on Thursday, May 26th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then our clinic at the Capitol Mall will continue 4 days per week. It's 11 to 8 Thursday through Saturday, and then 11 to 6 on Sunday. And again, with all our vaccination clinics, appointments are encouraged. The website, but also walk-ins are welcome. For testing, today we're testing in Rochester at the and from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the roof parking lot next to the Boys and Girls Club. Tomorrow we'll be again at Lacey at 3811 Pacific Avenue. Thursday we'll be in Olympia at the Union Gospel Mission, and Friday at the Evergreen State College. All the test sites are 10 to 1. If for some reason they reach capacity, they will have to close early, but right now they're scheduled to be open from 10 to 1. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Abdelmalek to provide some more information.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have seen an increase in COVID-19 transmission in Thurston County. Last Thursday, the CDC changed the community level, which is the composite score given to counties based on transmission rates and healthcare capacity, from low to medium. The big the big changes that come with this are for folks within our community who are at high risk of severe illness to consider wearing masks in indoor public spaces, ensure that they have a plan for testing if they get sick, stay in close communication with their healthcare provider, and if they get sick, speak to their healthcare provider regarding whether or not the available COVID-19 treatments might be available to them. This also is the other things to be cognizant of are people who are in crowded indoor spaces. I recommend that folks consider masking, as well as folks who are in contact with people who are at high risk for severe disease. The other news from the past week was that the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices did give additional recommendations regarding booster doses for the age group of 5 to 11. And the current recommendation is for folks between the ages of 5 to 11 who've completed a primary series to receive a booster dose 5 months after the last dose of their primary series. For folks who are immunocompromised, a second booster dose was approved for the 12 and ups, it continues to be recommended for the 12 and ups, and then in the 5 to 11 age group, the recommendation is that after a primary series, which can be either 2 or 3 2 or 3 primary doses, and in folks with moderate to severe immunocompromise, the recommendation is three primary doses. A booster dose can be given 3 months after the completion of that primary series. So we are seeing an increase in COVID-19 transmission. There are booster doses available, and as we learn more, we're able to do more to prevent severe illness from this disease. Thank you so much, commissioners.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions this morning, ma'am. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menser? No. I don't have. County Manager, go ahead.
Hey, Dr. A, do you have what? I know the county has moved into the medium range based on the CDC guidelines. What is the transmission rate? Do you have that number? Are we above 1 or we're still below 1?
So as of the last, this measure lags a little bit, but the most recent number, and this is really looking at April data, that DOH has released. So the R naught is 1.27.
Okay. Because I believe the significance of that is above 1 is concerning.
Yes, so R naught is a reflection of the average number of people who become infected when one person gets COVID. So this means that the average person who gets COVID goes on to infect approximately 1.3 additional people. When that number is less than 1, that's when we start to see the decreasing transmission rates, and when it's greater than 1, then we see increase.
Thank you.
I just wanted to let the commissioners know that United Way will be hosting a volunteer for appreciation for everyone who's participated in the vaccination clinics. That's going to be on June 2nd at 5:30 p.m. I think it's a great way to show everyone who's volunteered just a thank you for everything they've been able to do and all the hours they've invested. And it's going to be at the Thurston County Fairgrounds. Thank you, Dr. A. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Okay, next is homeless strategies, and I see Killing there now.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino from Public Health and Social Services. With me today, of course, is Tom Webster. So I'll give you some updates and then hand it over to him to give you updates on rent assistance. So today, just a reminder, the Regional Housing Council is going to be meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, May the 25th from 4 to 6 p.m. That is a public meeting. Folks can register to make public comment or to attend. If you Google Thurston Regional Housing Council, Thurston County, then it's pretty easy. You can just click a link and register for that. Today and this week, just important news on Ensign Road, and this is the most recent information that I have from the City of Olympia staff. It has been changing a little bit, is that over the last 2 days, they have been having folks that are residents currently on the side of Ensign Road signing up for permits in order to remain on Ensign Road until they can formally be moved to wherever it is that they will end up going. I believe, according to city staff, that 5 cars were either towed away or drove away yesterday. There will be a total of 31 permits that will go out to the remaining vehicles on Ensign Road. And then this week on Wednesday and Thursday, the lower half of Ensign will be closed in order to clean the streets. After they clean, they'll be moving the vehicles currently on the lower half of Ensign to the upper half just for a couple of hours in order to flush the streets and to protect the catch basins by putting some concrete barriers there so no one can park over those catch basins. So that's all happening this week. And that's as much information as I have currently from staff. And then also our office is in conversations with Department of Commerce, along with our partners at Lacey and City of Olympia regarding the governor's right-of-way budget proviso. We will be having a more in-depth conversation on Friday with you, presenting just some of the recommendations and steps moving forward that come from those conversations. At this point, we're still in preliminary discussions on what we can do to assist in the right-of-way cleanups along in Thurston County. At this point, the governor has identified 11 priority sites, 3 of which are in Thurston County, and the top 2 of 3 are in Thurston County. So a lot of attention on those right-of-ways. And I will give you more information as it comes. If not Friday, then next week. But I'm sure Friday will clear most of this up. And I'll hand it over to you, Tom, for rent assistance.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Tom Webster with Public Health and Social Services. So just a brief rent assistance update. Live Stories continues to process applications. So they're up to $2 million of funds distributed with 203 households served. So continuing to make progress. We have, and I believe I reported last week, we've reached out to the Department of Commerce, or actually they reached out to us and have additional staff capacity to help us work through the backlog with CAC. And so they are, we expect their team to start processing applications today. So we expect that will also increase our ability to work through the backlog. So we continue to kind of plug away at that. I will also just mention that I attended a meeting the 19th, whatever was that Thursday, with Auditor Hall and CAC. From my perspective, that was a productive meeting in moving forward, but I'll let Auditor Hall, whenever appropriate, provide additional information on that meeting. But I'm happy to answer any questions on rent assistance.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, Tom, you said we're at about 2 million with our current contract with Live Stories that have been dispersed. Is that right?
That's correct.
And I see later on in today's agenda, we're going to be discussing up to 1.7 million to go forward with a contract with Live Stories. Is that comparable to what we were spending with the CAC?
Yeah, so you're right. There's actually going to be 2 motions for you this afternoon, one for 1.7 and the other for 2.2 million. So we are adding additional funding to the Live Stories contract. So CAC, there was some variation month to month, but roughly they were spending around $2 million per month. $2 to $3 million per month. So I think we are at a similar rate of expenditure at CAC, as especially we expect that to pick up here, especially with getting the additional capacity from Commerce's team. So we do expect kind of the rate of expenditure to pick up, but we are very similar expenditure rate as what we were seeing with CAC.
And is that the cost of having either CAC or Live Stories do this process? Is that what we're paying for here? I'm trying to figure out the difference between what we're doing helping citizens and how much we're paying to help those citizens. I just want to know what the difference is.
So
The difference.
go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, go ahead, Robin. Within the program, there is a cap. There's an administrative cap on how much we can spend on kind of admin and operations for these programs. So the equivalent, the funds that we're spending to kind of operate the program are similar. So there's a percentage we pay Live Stories, and that's under the cap that is allowed under the program. So that's depending on the program. It was either 10% or 15% for the TRAP2 program. We're well under that with Live Stories.
Okay, so these couple items we're gonna have today for 1.7 and 2.2, that's money that we're giving that organization to get out, that's pass-through money.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay,
Very small percent of that is administrative
that's
costs.
what I was wondering, just trying to figure it out.
And we'll,
Yep, less than 10% is going to Live Stories for administration.
Okay,
and
good.
we'll walk you through as to why two different items later on when you review the items.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
More information.
Thank you. Commissioner Munson, questions? I don't have any questions, thank you. Okay. Next is the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for our meeting on May 24th this afternoon. I'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser. The approval of the Tuesday, May 24th agenda, and then the approval of the board meeting minutes for May 17th, 2022. There is one presentation today, and it's introduction of new Public Works employees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This afternoon, the Director of Public Works, Jennifer Walker, will introduce new employees to Public Works. Daniel Smith, Jean Boyning, Christopher Pearson, Jean Limi, Logan Shepard, and I believe Dylan Bitter and Lux Crawford. And they will give you additional details on that.
Thank you. Questions?
No questions, thank you.
Next, there will be an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
Yes, I'd like to, I think you may receive public testimony from Mr. Fred Tombridge, and he just stepped in this morning and handed over a document. I have not read that document, but I believe he will be providing testimony this afternoon related to a meeting. The members of the Patterson and Upper Lake communities met last week. They just continued the conversation of the management district. And I believe Mr. Tombridge is going to make statements that perhaps they violated OPMA, which those community meetings do not have to follow OPMA guidelines. I believe that is going to be the gist of his public testimony. And again, I have not read what he submitted this morning, but I got some information from the Department of Public Works that perhaps he might be stating that particular issue related to the meetings that were held last week with Public Works participation on the Patterson and North Lake communities.
Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Munson?
What is it that we're deciding and when, Patterson Lake?
You have a follow-up meeting tomorrow related to, I believe the board requested what would be the impact to Public Works staff if new lake management district will be with the board to consider. So tomorrow afternoon you have a briefing related to that, and at that point I will ask the board where you like to move. If we have enough information for you to move related to the lake, Patterson Lake petition. So at this point, I don't have a date because the board has not provided direction on the next steps.
I remember a preliminary discussion, and I don't remember just kind of where that ended off.
Yeah, what ended up at the last time, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I thought the conversation of last time and the briefing for this hearing was going to be to discuss, our questions were in regards to the $10,000 that we set aside and what Public Works was intending to do with that $10,000 to see if we would cover the $5,000 bond or not. So
That briefing is tomorrow.
that briefing is tomorrow. I spoke with Tim Wilson yesterday because of, we received an influx of email in regards to this, both in support, or at least I have, both in support and against. And so I was just asking for kind of an update and when was the follow-up for this. And so he said after tomorrow's conversation, he was going to be submitting another request for a meeting for us to discuss this more thoroughly. And so that, I guess, tomorrow we'll see, and then we'll have a follow-up to that. Did you understand?
I did understand.
Sorry.
I did understand, because the issue of the bond is a kind of a separate issue.
Yeah.
It connects, but it's not the decision. I mean, I would not make a decision about Patterson Lake's election based on whether we were or weren't subsidizing the bond. That's kind of a side issue. So I was curious about when we're gonna need to make the decision about placing the Patterson Lake election forward.
Yeah, I believe one of the questions the board asked at the last meeting is to make sure the Patterson Lake and Alpha Lake understand the interfund subsidy is not a given. And I believe that was a request by the board to make sure that is clear. And that also will be part of the conversation tomorrow. And I believe that was the reason as to why Public Works held that community meeting last week.
Okay.
So I think it was
So there's a good follow-up coming.
There's two elements on that, and at that point, I will ask the board tomorrow if you feel comfortable to take the next steps.
So we're covering both aspects tomorrow. Okay.
How long is that briefing? It's gonna seem really tight, I'll be honest. I feel like there's a lot of questions that came up last time. But okay, we'll tackle it when it comes tomorrow. Okay. Next is consent items.
Sorry, and I am following up with County Manager's update on Mr. Doug Drake. And he provided testimony related to a permit that he is going through related to manufacturer pool that he is going through. So staff from CPED is working with him to go through that process and facilitate what he needs to do. That would be the extent of my brief.
I know you've been working on this, Commissioner Mansur.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's preliminary, nothing set, but my understanding is that CPED's also working on kind of a better policy to try to make that a little easier. We may or may not get there, but I just thought it might be nice to say that we're trying to address that issue.
To a larger context, yes, and that eventually will come to the board, obviously, for decision. I believe that we're going to take this particular example as a way to move forward and perhaps bring some permanent recommendations for the board.
Commissioner Evers, questions?
No questions.
I did not know you needed a permit for a manufactured pool. It's like the things you learn.
To replace one.
It's one of those things that probably falls within, it's not that clear. You will have a conversation today on the food pop-ups.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes some of the new doesn't fit within the current context, so there's always opportunity for us to do better.
I guess I would just make one statement. I don't understand how come we're so permit heavy. If I get a second, I would avoid the whole process of having a permit for replacing that swimming pool. But it's my perspective.
I'd like to see what staff has to say about it, and maybe I'll be with you at that point.
Yeah, I want to see what the process is right now for that, because it's one of those things where I didn't know that, people needed a permit for this. I kind of want to see what the current code is and see what their proposal is, and yeah, if, you know, depending on that, then I'll be right there with Commissioner Edwards. Okay. Consent items A through E. First item, 3A, District Court, a resolution setting salaries for the District Court Commissioners. And then it's connected to item B, Superior Court, a resolution setting the salaries for the Superior Court Commissioners.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You discussed these items, the two, last week. And as you are aware, the state salary, citizen salary commissions for elected officials sets the salaries for the district court as well as superior court judges. And and those will take effect July 1st, 2022. The salary for the district court judges by the commissions has been set by $103,447. And for superior court judges, it's $203,169 a year. And that again will take effect July 1st, 2022. The Board of County Commissioners passed a resolution 15781, which states the district court as well as the superior court commissioners, those are appointed judges, they will be setting the salaries at 85% of the salaries set by the judges. So in this case, the item 3A is the district court to set the salaries of the district court commissioner at 85% of the district court judges. And item 3B is to set the salaries for the superior court commissioners, 85% of the superior court judges' salaries.
Questions on that item, Commissioner Edwards?
And how does the 85% get set? How do they end up getting their wages set, I guess? Is that state statute?
No, is the Board of County Commissioners passed a resolution 15780.
And when was that passed, in 81?
Years ago. I can't remember when that passed, but the board said that at that time, the 85%.
And how does that compare with other counties around the state?
I don't have that answer for you, Commissioner.
How does the salary get set for the Superior Court and the District Court judges?
The Washington Citizens Commission for Salaries and Elected Officials. The State Salary Commission is the one who sets those salaries for the judges.
Okay, so that's outside of the control of the county commission.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, I just think the public should know that.
Commissioner Edwards? Okay, I'm good as well. I asked several questions. There was a follow-up question though from last week, and I see Tara on here, and I'm gonna see if she was able. I know that this items were on, it was, one of them was on Superior Court's budget list that they were requesting last year, budget request for basically to increase that 85%. And we didn't pass it, but they requested for, and then District Court joined in as well, to have their commissioners be included in the market study to see if it would compare, kind of outlining what Commissioner Edwards just said. And Tara said you were gonna talk to Maria about this, and I was wondering if.
Yes, and we did have a conversation. They are definitely a part of the whole class and comp study. So
Okay.
we'll see what comes out of that.
Perfect, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I thought their budget item was about getting like leave days, like how many pro tem days they could have or something. Did they also want the higher percentage?
That was District Court. Superior Court was requesting for their court commissioners, they were requesting an increase from the 85%, but it was lower down the budget priority, so it was not, it was low for us as well since we were just, so.
Okay, got it.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, next item C, assessor, a resolution reclassifying position 01R00029 in the Thurston County Pay and Classification Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Assessor's Office requested for you to consider reclassification of appraisal assistant position to a senior appraisal assistant. And as you may recall, the county assessor provided some feedback, even at the last budget process, as well as last week, that he had a senior appraisal position, and he asked the board to downgrade in order to bring individuals into that position, get all the training, the certifications in place, and at that point is when the reclassification should be coming back again. So that has occurred, and the individual holding this particular position already has met all the minimum qualifications of the certifications. And the assessor's office, again, is asking for the board to reclassify the current appraiser assistant to a senior appraiser position. This particular action has an impact on the budget. It goes from $4,839 to $6,174 a month. That will be an increase of $1,337, 27% increase. And at this point, the assessor's office is planning to absorb within the current budget allocation in 2022.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
That increase that would be absorbed the following year would become one of the standard budget.
Yes, sir, that will be the baseline.
Right.
Yeah,
That'd
you're
be the
absolutely
baseline.
correct. And also the numbers that I gave you are the top range of those two classifications. That individual who comes in may not be coming to the high end of that classification. But you're absolutely correct.
And would you say that this is a retention and recruitment issue to deal with for county employees?
I would probably say that in addition to, is really a good practice by the assessor's office to get individuals be trained within the county system, be certified, and as well given the opportunity for a career ladder down the road. I think is in addition to these retention, recruitment and retention, as well as a good business practice, at least from my point of view.
Okay, thank you.
I would add that we've been doing this with the assessor's office for like 3 or 4 years now, where he brings in someone at the lower level. He'll reclass the position down, bring someone in at the lower level, then once they're certified, he'll reclass the position up to promote them. And then he'll reclass another position down so that he can continue this cycle.
It is good because bring what I call as new talent, be trained within the office of the assessor, and helping them to go through the certification. And if they actually been successful in that position, their reclassification is appropriate.
But Robin's point is why he's been advocating for a career ladder structure, so we don't have to keep classing up, classing down. We can see that that's the way the position is structured, that's the needs of the recruitment process. I'm not an HR expert, but it seems like if we can build that in somehow, it makes sense.
Right, and I've talked to Maria about the potential for an in-training type recruitment effort where you just leave the position at the higher level, you bring in someone at a lower level in training, and then once they complete the training, they automatically promote to the higher level within that position. And we could do that on many positions within the county. We've just not had capacity to really explore that type of program.
Yeah, and I believe the career ladder that you stated, Commissioner Messer, will be part of the class and comp. And I believe that Assessor Drew stated that when he had a meeting with the consultant, as you recall.
I agree, and I stated it as well because I heard it loud and clear from labor representatives all during the last 2 years that there's a lot of, as Robin said, there's a lot of groups that would benefit from that. It's not every group, it depends on, when we've got a two-step, an audit, but if you think about it thoughtfully, it seems like it can be really useful.
Thank you. Okay. Next, Human Resources Collective Bargaining Agreement between Thurston County and the Thurston County Deputy Sheriff's Association.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your consideration is to ratify the contract with the Thurston County and Thurston County Deputy Sheriff's Association. The bargaining unit has ratified the terms of the contract, and upon the board's action, this will take effect January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. That is a 3-year contract. I believe we held an executive session for you to hear the terms of the contract. And at this point, I recommend for you to approve this contract.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, ma'am.
Questions, Commissioner Munster? No? Okay. Next, Public Works, a resolution reclassifying position 34R01302 in the Thurston County Management and Technical Pay Plan and the Thurston County At-Will Pay Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you may recall, last year the board created a new classification, that is the Assistant Director classification. It was geared towards helping the big, more complex departments to help the director in managing the internal operations of that. You took an action early in the year, I believe, reclassifying a position in Public Health and Social Services, and that position was reclassified to an Assistant Director. We were in the process of recruiting for that position. Unfortunately, at that point, Shelley Slaughter resigned. We're in the process of securing hiring a new director. And with the new director, then we'll have he or she the opportunity to recruit and select the assistant director. In this particular request, Public Works has gone through the process as to how better utilize this position. Certainly is going to be a big help for the department and the director of Public Works. In this particular request is for you to reclassify the existing senior management analyst to a department assistant director. So in a way, we're not creating a new position, but certainly it's going to be an impact on the budget. And the budget is, we'll go with this reclassification from $9,509 per month to $11,477 per month. That will be $1,968 a month increase, by a 20% increase. This position will not be funded by the general fund, as Public Works has many funding sources that will cover this increase. And they are not expecting or requesting any additional budget authority this year. Barring any questions?
Questions?
No
Commissioner Edwards?
questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munster? No questions for me. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes our consent items. Next, we're going to move on to department items. First item, item 4A from the Auditor's Office, approval of the voucher list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under normal circumstances, this particular item is on your consent agenda where you will be approving the voucher list for, in this case, for the week of May 2022, which have many items related to the payments related to the operations of the county. In this particular case, there's a combined amount of $3,771,566.37. Commissioner Edwards has requested that every time we see an item related to the payment of the atrium, the 3000 Pacific atrium, he requested to bring this as a permanent item for the board to consider exercising independent votes on this. So in this particular voucher, there is an item on page 40 related to the atrium, and that is in the amount of $6,541.16.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Not at this time, ma'am.
Questions, Commissioner Munster? Okay. Next, Central Services, item 5A, fairground improvements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, I believe, a good next step that, at least from my point of view, we're waiting. This is related to what we call is the signature project at the fairgrounds. The board allocated some REIT dollars related to this particular project. And the Fair Board has been very keen in securing additional grants to continue with this process. So this particular item is for you to consider awarding an amendment number 11 in this case, to MSGS Architects to begin the design process in this particular building. The intent is to have, the ultimate project is to build the agriplex building that is going to be located where currently all buildings are located. The first phase of the process, as you may recall, will be to turn down the 16 old buildings and begin the process of securing additional funding. But I think this is a good first step in securing the services of an architect will give us an understanding of the specific design as well as the ultimate cost of the ultimate project. Robin?
Nothing to add.
If you have any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, this is to put up, we're gonna tear something down in the space, but we're gonna put up a steel building, is my understanding, is that right?
That is the expectation. I think with the help of an architectural firms will help us define how that building structure will be.
Is $100,000 spent at this point in time when these steel buildings come pre-designed? Is that really a necessary expenditure, considering we're gonna have a flat spot there? We're gonna have a building that comes ready to go, already designed for that, for a flat location. It just seems like it might be excessive. I just want the folks that are trying to accomplish this, the fair committee mainly, to be able to get the best bang for the buck as they move forward. And this is what, is this like 10% or something of what we might be putting on the building? What percentage is this of that steel building?
So maybe allow me to address your first question.
Okay.
You're absolutely correct, and most of the steel structures, they come with already somewhat of a design. The structure itself in terms of the structure, the roof and the columns. But this particular item is to determine the size and the use of this particular building. So the building, if it's an agriplex, what is the functions inside that needs to be done and how it needs to be accomplished in terms of circulation and any other design elements that may be supporting this particular structure. I agree with you if the single objective is just to stand the building, but in this case is to design a building. They can better serve the intended purpose, I believe, of the fair foundation. So it's more than just placing the building. It's the functionality behind it and what else needs to be done to support the ultimate operations of that building. And the architectural firm is the one who does that. And I believe that is even a recommendation by the Fair Board in this particular case for you to consider this item. Did I?
Yeah, that kind of covers what's the percentage of what we're going to expend on the building that we would be putting out for that design process. That seems like it's higher than it should be, but that's because I'm a type 1.
So the only cost that I can probably give you at this point is the first phase. And the first phase, it was there's $250,000 of REIT dollars, and the Fair Board secured a grant of $250,000. It's $500,000. And the first phase, I believe, is just to take the current structure down, because we don't know the actual cost of the ultimate building until we can actually go through the design process. They will add permitting requirements, site improvements, and everything, really the details as to how we're gonna be building this building. So that is a good question as to the percentage. I don't think we have that available at this point on this.
Isn't there a standard, if you will, that design costs are generally X percentage of a given construction project?
On the yes, industry standards covers just about. If you look at an overall project delivery, you probably look about 25% of engineering and construction inspection. It's engineering and engineering construction, and that is just about gravitated between 25%. Maybe at this point will be a little bit more, but also the construction costs are going up, so that percentage is equivalent to the construction cost. So that is probably about 25% if you give and take, and that is perhaps an industry standard. Each project has their own nuances, obviously, but that's probably what Robin is asking.
As we move forward on this, we're going to attempt to make this building the most user-friendly it can be on many levels. I think not only the fair level, but
We want a
Given
building that
vaccination.
we can use year-round.
Yeah.
And that will create revenue for the fairgrounds.
Absolutely, it's a revenue
Yeah.
generator.
Yeah, we're trying to turn this into a revenue generator.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I would add, though, as Romero said, we can only at this point speak to phase one. The building itself is phase two, and we don't have funding identified for phase two. We have money right now to tear down the unsafe structure that's currently there, do a water project that's required, and then level the property where the old building is, so that the property itself can be used in this current cycle. And the design costs, having the design ready to go for the building, will put us in a much better position to obtain grants and other funding to be able to actually do the building itself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Mensah, question?
I agree with Commissioner Edwards to a large extent. I mean, it seems like $101,000, what's that, maybe half of a full-time engineer for a year with their benefits and equipment. So someone's gonna be working full-time for 6 months, 40 hours a week in order to figure out how to put up a metal building that's prefabricated. That seems odd, but you know, if the Fair Board thinks it's the right approach, I guess I won't stand in the way of their project, but it does seem excessive given the kind of building that we've committed to putting there.
Yeah.
When we're scratching
I don't
out,
want to stand in anybody's
when we're
way.
scratching out dollars for, you know, to try to get to the finish line,
That's kind of my work. I see what you both are saying, and I'm in the same thought process as well. I feel like, you know, we kind of were looking at different avenues for funding, and it seems like a big bite out of the apple.
How is this contract structured? I mean, is this a flat amount or this is an anticipated like up to that amount by the hour type of a situation? I mean, are we committing that we're gonna write them a check for $101,000 because that's what they're insisting is gonna be the cost?
So maybe Jason can give us a little more detail about the contract itself.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Jason Ash, Facilities Manager. So I just want to add that this is about 10% of the high-level cost estimate for the whole project. I do want to say that's high level, meaning we don't have the exact cost of the pre-engineered building. It was just a rough order of magnitude we came up with. And this falls well within state's max allowable cost allocations, being a little less than 10% of the cost. And it's also just not the design of the metal building. It'll include geotechnical reports to make sure that we can actually place it on the land they want. It'll include design, civil drawings for the whole site plan for, as Robin stated earlier, the water fire suppression line extension, along with the electrical drawings for the site plan.
That doesn't answer my question of how this contract is structured.
Oh, so it's on a per hour basis. It will not exceed this. There may be some money we get back depending upon when we move forward. The contract does include post-construction services if we do go to design, or if we do go to construction. But Commissioner Mesner, for the most part, it is a set in place price that we have received.
It's part of our on-call contracts.
Yes.
Well, I think you just said two different things. You said it's by the hour, it could be up to that. Then you just said it's a
Right.
set on price that we've got. Those are
The hourly is set,
the hourly
The
rate
hourly.
is set,
right?
but the number of hours that are gonna be expended are unclear.
is estimated by the firm when we negotiated this
Cost
contract.
of work.
Because we had to set a cap.
Right,
But if we're right, then maybe it's not as complicated as they think, then it won't cost as much.
true.
Okay, that's all I'm trying to clarify.
Does that ever happen? Did we-
Yes.
Yeah, it does happen.
Yeah, we do
But-
come in under budget. Yeah.
Do we work with this architectural firm before? I don't necessarily recognize the initials.
Yes, we have.
Are they a local group here?
Do you know where this group is out of, Jason?
Yes, they are local. They're Olympia area.
Do they have any expertise in fairs?
I don't know that information.
Certainly, please don't feel obligated to take this action this afternoon. If you have any additional questions, we'll certainly come back with all the questions that you need.
I want this to happen, but I want it to happen as cost effectively as it can be. That's my
And that's
concern.
also our objective, Commissioner.
And we don't actually go to bid when we do these, because we're, I guess this is a more efficient way of doing it, I'm told.
Because we have an on-call contract.
Yes, on-call
And we went to bid to establish the
that.
on-call contracts.
Okay,
It's a similar model that Public Works utilizes in securing
okay.
different experiences.
I will add it did come in lower than the Fair Board had previously thought. I believe Josh presented to you guys back in November with the estimated costs that the Fair Board had reached out and done some market research, and this contract did come in lower than what they had expected.
What was the market research? Do you have that number?
The total they have for the plans is 130,000.
29,000.
And Jason, do you get like monthly invoices or something so you can kind of track and make sure that what they're doing is on point and you can kind of be our watchdog on that?
Yes, I do. I get a schedule of values for the work with each billing cycle.
Appreciate that, thank you.
So that's a good point, though, that you're making, Commissioner Messer. In any type of billing that we receive, whether it's construction, professional services, we don't authorize payments on a lump sum. It has to be based on activity and deliverables. It has to be based on the hourly rate. In this particular case, for instance, an invoice will be the services of a national architect, the number of hours that he or she has spent, and what the activity is associated with that. So it gets to the level of detail that we as a staff review those invoices before we pass that on. So, and that goes back also to construction projects. It is very specific in terms of time and materials as specified on the contract. So there's always that check and balance that we go through. So, and that is a good question just for the public to understand. There's not a lump sum that we give to any consultant. We just set the contract amount, and then through the process, we do our due diligence to check the deliverables at the activity level.
Thank you. Okay. Are we good on this item, Commissioners?
Right.
Okay. Moving on to thank you, Jason. Moving on to item 6A from the Commissioner's Office, Thurston County Keep Washington Working Policies.
So thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item that, at least from my point of view, have been working for quite some time. So as a matter of background, back in 2019, the Washington State Legislature passed the Keep Washington Working Act, also known as the KWW, to establish the statewide practices regarding the enforcement of federal immigration laws by state and local agencies, and provide improved support of economic opportunities to all Washingtonians regardless of their immigration and citizen status. The purpose of this policy is to assist judicial officers, courthouse personnel, law enforcement personnel, and local government officials in understanding and implementing policies consistent with the Keep Washington Working Act, and to help ensure that all residents, regardless of citizenship status, have full access to the justice system. Thurston County personnel shall presume that federal immigration authorities are engaged in immigration enforcement. This particular policy's final consideration before you has been in the works. It has been participation from key stakeholders, that will be Superior Court, District Court, as well as the Sheriff's Office. We have reviewed those policies. We have sent out those policies for public review in 2 occasions, which we have received comments to those policies, and those policies have been incorporated in the final version that you see before you. I introduced this item for your consideration maybe 2 months ago. You requested to send to the stakeholders here in the event for an additional final review. We only comments that we received is from District Court, outlining the actual title of the District Court Administrator. I believe is they call the Chief Executive District Court Administrator. So that's the only change they suggested. And so at this point, barring any questions and additional perspective from the board, I will recommend for you to approve those policies. And I believe Elizabeth is here with us to answer any particular questions related to that. I'll be more than happy to walk you through. I have a copy before you, including your packet through the final version of the policies. And again, for your consideration is this item. Long process.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
All the affected players, if you will, have had opportunity to comment and work on this, is that right?
That is correct, sir. And when we have given many opportunities and the comments that we receive, I believe, from some stakeholders, they're very appreciative of this process. I'm looking forward to final approval.
Commissioner Mentor, questions?
I would just remind folks where this is all coming from. We had ICE under the previous administration targeting courthouses to bring people into detention, including our own courthouse where somebody, unmarked agents, took somebody away. And that interferes with the administration of justice in our state. Our Supreme Court has said that, our Superior Court has said that. If you're a victim of a crime and the key witness is too afraid to come to the courthouse to testify because of these policies, that's not helping anybody in the community. So this has been a really long process. I applaud the state for taking action and giving us guidance to have us develop these, and then community members who are really well versed in these issues gave input, and Elizabeth worked on this very hard with Sheriff's Office and all of our different court leadership. So I appreciate everybody's effort because from my understanding, we have a pretty good document here that tries to capture what the intent of that Keep Washington Working law was about. And I support that, so I'm glad to see this get implemented.
I have some, page 20, can we do a spacing check? There's a lot of words that are together that I saw. So.
Yeah, we'll go through
before it gets signed by everyone, if that can be corrected as well.
Thank you for checking.
And then my next comment, and I asked about this last time, and I'm just kind of looking for an answer. And I looked through this and seemed well. I was happy to see the length of the U and T visas. When I worked in immigration, it was kind of what I specifically worked on, and so I know the frustration when you have a victim of a crime and you're trying to get that certification from either a law enforcement agency or the courts, and sometimes how that can really elongate the process way longer than what it really needs to be. So I was glad to see those deadlines put in there. My question was that I asked last time that I didn't quite see noted on, and so I was wondering if Superior Court said something back, was, when the way the jury system works is everyone that either is registered to vote or has a department, has either a license or an ID in Washington State, gets a jury summons. And so when those summonses go out, you can either answer online or you answer when you come in. And one of the questions is, are you a US citizen? And so I'm wondering how that information is either being addressed, is it being kept? And if someone answers no to that, you know, like what happens after that with public records? So that's my question. Elizabeth?
Good morning, Commissioners. That sounds like it's if I was tracking what you were saying, a concern you have about a process in the Superior Court.
Yes,
Is
so
that- okay.
on page 5, it says the gathering information related to immigration or citizen status. So I know per law you have to ask that question, right? Because you have to be a US citizen to serve on a jury. But I'm just wondering what the public records is on specifically those people who are answering no or yes to those questions. And I asked this question last time, and I know you said you would check with Superior Court, so I was just wondering what their answer was on this.
My apologies, I didn't ask that question to Superior Court, but I can ask that question. And I can make sure I respond to you before you sign it. Do you have a suggestion of who would be the best contact for me to work with in Superior Court other than the court administrator?
Since they don't have a court administrator right now, I guess it would be.
Well,
Maybe
I could work, I know Tad O'Brien's being the acting court administrator. I could start with Ted and figure out the best person to talk to. And I can also talk to Karen Horowitz, who is our public records attorney that can understand the issues.
I know the public records laws are different with Superior Court specifically.
Oh, that's true.
When it comes to like judicial officers and notes and all of that. But just with people inputting that sensitive information, I know there's kind of some laws protecting it, but I was wondering to what extent. And this won't affect me, you know, supporting this. I think we need it.
I was gonna ask you what to delay this until we get that conversation.
I think it needs to be passed, and I can get that information later on. That's fine with me. I mean,
the policy's right. It's your question, and I agree. I'd like to know is the jury questionnaire consistent with this? And that may be a policy change to make, but it's not, doesn't affect this.
Commissioner Edwards?
I guess as a follow-up to that, once a potential juror answers the question that they are not a citizen, if that's the question, are you a citizen or not, I would guess the follow-up question that goes along with that could be more damning, if you will, than just asking the question, if they were keeping that information. Because if they're not gonna be on the jury because they're not a citizen, I would hope they wouldn't ask anymore.
They don't. Like, that's one of the first questions. So if you go, there's 3 questions to qualify as a juror. It's, are you a US citizen? Do you reside in Thurston County? And I think it's, are you over the age of 18, I believe. And so there's like 3 qualifying questions that you have to ask in order.
Asked orally, or they write it on a questionnaire?
They write it on a questionnaire, and sometimes they fill it out online. Now that everything's been kind of electronic, jurors can go to the Superior Court website and fill out basically their initial questionnaire with all their information.
But also, if I may, answering that question, yes or no, is not the polarized answers, because it's something in the middle. For somebody who answers not a citizen, could be a legal resident.
Oh, sure.
It carries a green card.
Yes.
So within that context, also, it's not somebody who perhaps doesn't have the appropriate documentation. So it's always in the middle. There's somebody perhaps doesn't have the right to serve as a juror because they're not citizens, but can certainly be a legal resident.
But this statement, I think this is the essence of the question, it says Thurston County records of information regarding a person's immigration or citizenship status or place of birth shall be aggregated or de-identified from the individual unless otherwise required by law. So the question is, whatever we're doing with those questionnaires, is it consistent with that statement?
Yeah.
Is it being de-identified, redacted, I don't know, aggregated, and then the questionnaire is destroyed?
Or perhaps after the board considered a privilege policy and Superior Court signs that will be the next steps they need to take to make sure they abide by the policy.
Right, as long as
Yeah.
they're aware of that.
Right.
So, yeah, no, but this, I think it's great. I was just wondering, as a part of it. Okay.
We'll follow up. No question, Madam Chair.
Any more questions on this? Okay. Next, community planning and economic development. 7A, contract for hearing and examiner pro tem services. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You reviewed this item last week, and for your considerations is to award the contract for a hearing examiners pro term to Judge Stephen Shelton. He's a retired judge. And in the contract services will be from 2022 through 2025. I believe Judge Shelton retired, has been serving in this capacity since the last pro term retired. And the intent to have this pro term service, hearing examiners pro term, is to expedite the workload the current hearing examiners have in her docket. There were two proposals that we staff in the review, and obviously those two proposals were more than qualified. It came down to the dollars and cents. So this particular proposal is just about $175 an hour, and it will be fee for service. This is not a over-encompassing contract. So every time the Judge Shelton provides services as a hearing examiners pro term, his hourly rate will be about $175 an hour. And Jeremy Josh is here to answer any particular questions or additional perspective.
Questions?
No questions, we went over this.
No, I don't have questions. Thank you. Okay, next is emergency services, item 8A, active shooter incident management basic train the trainer course.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You also reviewed this item last week. The Thurston County Fire Chiefs Association, Thurston County Law Enforcement Agencies, and the Thurston County Mass Casualty Incident Committee have identified the need for further training to enhance the unified command efforts on scene during mass casualty incidents. The active shooter incident management basic train the trainer to this course was they have identified. And this particular proposal is for you to consider awarding a contract to Pathways Incorporated. We corrected that on the action for a cost of $17,991. And this particular item certainly is well needed for the first responders here in Thurston County. This particular grant will come from, I believe, do we have a grant for this, Kurt? Ben, you're back.
Yeah, this will come from the 2019 fiscal year SHSP grant that's currently appropriated in the 2022 budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional information to add, Ben? Okay, he froze. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, we went over this too, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah? No. Okay. Next is item B, amendment to Thurston County 21 EMPG, ARPA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You may recall earlier in the year, the Board of County Commissioners authorized a contract with the Washington State Emergency Management Division for an amount of $43,178 and for a grant for us to receive from the ARPA funds allocated to the state. The intent of this particular grant was to upgrade all the electronic equipment at the ECC, and that's the emergency service operations room. We became aware there is additional grant available for this particular purpose, so this particular item is for you to consider an amendment to the grant for an additional $10,055. So the total contract that we will have with the State Emergency Management Division will be for $54,333. That's the grant. As you heard last week, there is a match associated with this, and this will be, I believe, with salaries for those individuals involved in this project that will be covering the match. Ben?
I have nothing further to add other than the match will be through policy development, developing training for ECC contact lists, job aids, and through procedures for match to this grant. If there's any other questions, let me know.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer? Okay, thank you, Ben. Item 9A from Public Defense, approval of a contract with the State of Washington Office of Public Defense.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you're well aware, the Thurston County Public Defense provide defense services at the Thurston County Family and Juvenile Court. And we receive compensation from the state related to those services. In this particular case is the amount of $172.908. It comes from the Washington Office of Public Defense. And this is to cover the monthly payments of $12,520 for attorney services and $1,899 for countywide administrative processes for services, for a total of $14,409 a month. And this will begin July 1st, 2022, and will carry on through June 30, 2023. The Director of Public Defense, Patrick O'Connor, is here to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Any additional information, Patrick, that you would like to add?
No, good morning, Commissioners. Here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Revenue source?
There's a grant that's coming from the Washington State Office of Public Defense.
This is money that will come to us.
This will come to us.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
Patrick answered my questions last week.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Next, Public Health and Social Services, item 10A, approval of the interlocal agreements for specialized recreation services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This particular proposal for you is to approve interlocal agreements with the city of Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey for the period of May 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. Each of the three cities allocate funding through this agreement. They will pay to Thurston County to provide specialized recreation services for individuals with developmental disabilities. The City of Olympia annual amount is for $13,720. The City of Lacey is for $8,377, and the City of Tumwater for $12,145. The specialized recreation program is a regional program offering recreation of activities designed for adults with developmental disabilities. The program serves just about 200 clients with activities ranging from social dances, trips to community events, bowling, and swim clubs. I believe last question was asked how the allocations proceeded was stated is a loan amount. And it was at that point based on population, but certainly it's an opportunity to look into the future as to how the new allocation by the cities based on the population should be redo at a later date. So we have Margaret here to answer any additional questions.
Good morning. Morning. Anything you'd like to add, Margaret?
I believe last week I think Commissioner Menzer asked the percentage breakdown for the city contributions and how it relates to the rest of the budget. And I do have those figures if you would like.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the city of Lacey with their contribution is at 4.5%. The city of Olympia is at 7.5%. And the city of Tumwater is at 1% of our overall total budget. I do bring in 46% recovered for our program fees, and that leaves the general fund that you allow to us is 13.5%. The remainder of millage fund is 24%.
Thank you. Questions?
My question would be, is it time to review this, to see about a fairer distribution?
I think with the board concurrence, moving forward on this particular proposal would give us time when the new agreement will come for your consideration later on. Yes, I think it's time to review the percentages by the cities.
Yeah,
as we know, the city of Lacey is probably already surpassed the city of Olympia's population.
And this has been a long time ongoing activity. I don't know how many years, but I mean, it isn't like it's something new.
Yeah,
Just need a little bit of an upgrade.
It's long time services that we have provided to those members of our community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
No, thank you for that information, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, item 10B, Department of Social Health and Services Developmental Disabilities Administration County Program Agreement with Thurston County.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We currently have a contract with the Developmental Disabilities Administration of the state. In the program agreement number includes a includes a dollar amount the board approved. In this particular proposal, during this amendments to add an additional $5,704,225. The total amount with this amendment will be $11,229,653, and the performance of this contract is extended to June 30, 2023. The county services include high school transition, community information, and education activities, provided training, employment, and community inclusion, high school transition services, and provide opportunities for exploration of vocational interest, facilitating connections for adult services, and working towards job attainment upon graduation. Information and training activities build the skills of providers and increase public awareness of developmental disabilities issues and related services. Mark Moffett is here to answer additional questions related to this particular request. And again, it's the amendments to secure additional funding for those programs that comes from the state.
Anything you'd like to add, Mark?
Good morning, Commissioners. It also extends the contract by 1 year until June 30th of 2023.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer? I don't have questions as well. Okay, next, item 10C and then item 10D are connected. 10C is Treasury Rent Assistance Contract with Life Stories, and 10D is amendment to Life Stories Rent Assistance Contract.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The two are related to the Community Action Council contracts that we had. Let me begin with the $1.7 million for your consideration. That would be item 10C. And on the when we have the contract with the Community Action Council, we to provide rental assistance to those residents of Thurston County in need of those services. We upfront $2 million to help them go through the cash flow on a monthly basis. So since the county suspended the contract with CAC, we requested to send us that back. So there were some additional expenditures they needed to cover as a result of some of the requests the county sent to CAC. So they returned $1.7 million of that advance payment. And that is one grant. As we know, we have many grants related to rental assistance. So this particular proposal is for you to consider adding the $1.7 million to the contract of Live Stories to continue to provide services and rental assistance. The next item is related to $2.2 million, and that's also related to the Community Action Council contract. Because the initial contract with Community Action Council, after the county suspended the contract, it had a remainder dollar amount of $2.2 million. So that is also, they will need to bring back in for your consideration to also award those $2.2 million to Live Stories to continue with those services. Again, the reason as to why the two different items to Live Stories because each of those items have a different grant source. I think it's one from the state, the other one's from the federal government. And Tom's here to answer any questions you may have or additional perspective.
Tom, anything you would like to add?
No, that's a very good summary. And just to reiterate, that the first contract, 1.7 million, will be a new contract because that is money coming directly from Treasury. The second contract, item D, is an amendment to the existing contract. But the county manager is correct. One of those sources of funds is directly from the Department of Treasury. The second source of funds is via the Washington State Department of Commerce.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Tom, earlier this morning you had mentioned that of the total that's going to go through Live Stories, they received as compensation, what, less than 10% to administer?
Yeah, it's approximately 9% is what they take to operate the program.
So the rest of it is passed through to those in need?
Yes, the rest goes for rent and utility assistance payments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer? I don't have questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Public Works, 11A, resolution vacating unopened rights of way in the plat of Boston Harbor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You reviewed this item last week. And on November 10, 2020, a public hearing was held by the hearing examiners where they recommended the vacation of an open right of way located on 69th Avenue Northeast. That is within the Boston Harbor area. That is adjacent to the Burfoot Park. And I believe the board, the only way that's how we can vacate a property that has been deeded to the county for public use is when the county has not opened for public use. This has been closed, never was open in this particular deed was back in October 24, 1907. That was an old plat. And the board reviewed this item and requested on the action includes what will be the financial compensation that will be as a result of this particular action the board may consider. And included on your item is the dollar amount. However, the dollar amount has transported numbers. It should be $3,724, not the $3,742. So we'll correct that for your consideration this afternoon. Barring any questions, Craig Cesar is here too.
Craig, sorry. Craig, any additional perspective?
I have nothing to add, but I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer, Edwards?
I guess my question would be, if the hearings examiner heard this 6 months ago, what takes so long? Just the process?
It requires an appraisal to be completed on the property. Right now, there's a shortage of appraisers that are qualified to do these kinds of things. So that's the process, that's the delay after the hearings examiner until we get to this point.
Okay, that's only 110 years or so.
Right.
Where's another 2 months?
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Menzer? Okay. Thank you, Craig. Next item, item 11B, quitclaim deed to Lantbrook LLC for parcel number 145-111-11330200.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You reviewed this item a little more in detail last Tuesday morning. As a matter of background, back in 1905, Thurston County purchased this land, known as the Thurston County parcel number, as you stated, 14511330 from Jonas and Mary Erickson for a whopping $50. And the use of this particular use was for to use as a gravel pit for the local road projects. When that deed was exercised with the Ericksons back in 1905 had a reversionary clause. And the reversionary clause stated that if the county ceases to using this parcel for a gravel pit, then it needs to go back to the heirs of this particular family. So after researching public works records, it was confirmed that in fact the site is no longer needed, has not been used by public works for the intended purposes as the gravel pit. So as a result, the descendant of the original grantor, Mr. Dick Erickson, requested the county to transfer the property back to him. This is no longer used for gravel pit. And the board has requested to have an actual items for you to take an action on this. And this is the result of that request. And Craig Sisson is here to answer additional questions.
Craig?
Yeah, that is a great summary. I'm here to answer any questions. I would like to add that there was some further research done. Commissioner Edwards had asked that we do some research. The property is reverting back to the original parcel from which it was separated. And that was one of his questions about maybe there were some other family members that may have some interest in this. The property is reverting back to the original parcel from which it was separated. And that is Mr. Erickson, Dick Erickson's property as of this point in time.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you. Everything was covered.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer? Okay, thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it.
Next, we'll be reviewing our signing items. Commissioners will report on board work sessions and assigned committee meetings, and the county manager will review the Board of County Commissioners schedule for the week of May 24th. We have a public hearing scheduled at 3, and I will be stopping because this is a long agenda today from the Board of County Commissioners, I'll be stopping at 3 so we can do our public hearing, and then we'll be going back to the agenda. That way, members of the public who are here for that can go ahead and do this instead of waiting until the end of our agenda, since it is a long one today. So the public hearing today is community planning and economic development. For public hearing renewal of interim, read the wrong part. Renewal of interim emergency housing ordinance 15792.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. For your consideration, you will be hearing public testimony for you to renew the interim emergency housing ordinance. Back in June 25th, 2019, the Board of County Commissioners passed the ordinance 15792, which is the interim emergency housing ordinance. And since it has been renewed just about every 6 months. This current temporary interim emergency ordinance lapses on June 9th, 2022. And for your considerations this afternoon is 2 actions. One, obviously to close the public hearing. And the next, based on the public testimony, we have an option to approve the renewal of this ordinance. Also, the Board of County Commissioners added into the docket for the staff to work on a permanent fix in the code. So the board may not be seeing this as renewing this every 6 months, since the board directed staff to have more of a permanent solution to this. Leah Davis is here to answer any questions. Leaving to the public hearing this afternoon.
Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No question. Well, yes, one question. There's still no residency requirement on any of the participants, is that correct?
As a land use regulation, there are never any residency requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer? Okay. No questions for me as well. So that will conclude our agenda for May 24th. It is a long one. So bring in some water to keep hydrated. Our Board of County Commissioners meeting for May 31st is canceled. So we will be picking up with a new meeting on, what's the next Tuesday?
June 7th.
June 2nd?
June 7th.
7th? So our next meeting will be June 7th.
And we will review the agenda for June 7th next Tuesday morning.
So, okay. With that, let's go ahead and take a break. It is 10:34. We will be back at 10:45. Thank you. And we are back. It is 10:49 a.m. And we left up with proclamations and awards.
Good morning, Jamie Caldwell, Clerk of the Board. The proclamation for the LGBTQ plus Pride Month has been included for your review. I have confirmation from the local organizations Pizza Clatch and P-Flag that they will have representatives in attendance in person on June 7th to accept. This is the last proclamation scheduled to be presented for the month of June. I did receive a request from the United Way of King County asking to partner and proclaim the week of June 27th to July 1st as Summer Meals Week in Thurston County. I've included a draft of the proclamation. If you'd like to proceed forward with that, I can also reach out to the Thurston County United Way and ask if they have representatives that would like to attend and accept as well. There have been no new applications received for boards and commissions. I did contact Ms. Gaffigan and let her know that I would reach out to her once I receive confirmation from the LMTAAA that their sitting member officially announced their resignation. The email from Jessica Hodges has been included in your packet for review as well because Ms. Gaffigan is being recommended for appointment once the resignation is announced. I've also included the reappointment requests again for Vog May to the Housing Authority and Paul Longwell to the Fair Board, as I'm still waiting guidance as to how you'd like to proceed with their requests. If you'd like to approve, I can get them added to the June 7th agenda for reappointment. And unless you have any questions, that's all I have.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
So June 6th is really June 7th for LGBTQ month.
I believe that it's the beginning of the week there. It's for the June 7th is when we would actually be presenting it. Monday's the 6th.
Okay, and is this Pride Month proclamation like based on what we've done in the past?
Yes. Yeah, I went through and updated some more of the pertinent information in it.
I would usually there's like some statistics or a little bit more like information, and I would think in this particular one in particular there would be some like new sort of information that I want to include. I want, a super long proclamation, but it seems a little skimpy, I guess.
Okay.
And I think it's an important issue that we might be able to throw some new data or just a few other words.
I can check a couple other websites. The one that I used that was used last year didn't have any statistical info, but I can definitely look around and get some other information to add into it.
Just kind of like maybe just even if it's demographic, like this number of county resident, there's all sorts of things you can do, but okay, if that's okay with the board, I'd like.
Nicole might be a good resource as
Yeah,
well.
Nicole could help us.
Okay.
Or the organizations we're inviting, Pizza Clatch has really good information, so I'm sure they would be happy to provide that.
Sure.
That'd be good. And then I guess you're asking for questions on, Fair Board, we have a reappointment, we have a lot of open seats, fairs coming up, shouldn't we get that one done? I guess I'm asking my teammates.
Yeah.
I can't remember why we didn't do it last week.
Yes,
Is that okay, Commissioner?
I think we should add it to today's agenda since next week's is canceled. Is that
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I can get it added to today's.
Okay. With that, we will move on to PIO check-in.
I think for last week I reported I was going to send an email to Mr. Joe Anna as the chair of the Cultural Advisory Committee. That email was sent last Tuesday at 1:42 in the afternoon requesting the additional information the board requested. And I just want to circle back that email went out. I included your assistance on that email, so hopefully they provided you with an update on that.
Was there a response?
No, I have not. I asked as to when they might be able to give me an approximate time when they will be delivering that information. I have not received that yet.
Okay. Questions? Okay. PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. The one thing I did want to update you on is that we are working on a Board of Health expansion webpage that will talk about the application process and a news release that we expect to have out by the end of this week, so we can begin recruiting for the Board of Health members. So, and I have no other updates for you this morning, so pending any questions, that's what I have.
And I have an agenda item on this session to give you more additional perspective on the steps that we're taking this Friday.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards? Commissioner Menzer? I do want to thank Brian for his help. We did the coffee with the commissioner at Sandstone Cafe, and the county manager as well as Gretchen joined me. And so that's on YouTube.
Yes, it is available on YouTube, and we're also going to add a link to that on the Board of Health expansion page because it does talk about why we're expanding the Board of Health and so.
So thank you to Brian for helping with the coordination of that. Okay, briefing, public hearing, decisions pending.
Nothing's pending, Madam Chair.
Okay, and then we have commissioner items. The first one is pop-up temporary food permits.
Thank you. We have Art and Sammy Bird. I know this is an item the board would like to, so hopefully it's enough time. And I do have an executive session at the end of this morning. That may only take maybe 20 minutes. So.
And I do have one commissioner's item that I need to bring up, so after this presentation. Okay. Okay, Art, Sammy, you want to take this away?
I will quickly hand things over to Sammy, but as you know, we've had discussions in the past about pop-up temporary food events, and those are things where vendors would like to be able to rotate between different venues like microbreweries or tasting rooms or things and set up a temporary food establishment. And we've had questions about that and the approach that we're taking on those. And so Sammy, our supervisor of our food and environmental services section, who's very familiar with the issues and has done lots of inspections and things, is here to give a quick overview of the permitting kind of requirements, not so much the requirements, but the way that temporary food events fit in within the kind of realm of public food establishments, and discuss a little bit of some of the things we have to address or concerns that we have, and also discuss some options for the future. So I'll, without further ado, I'll turn things over to Sammy. He's prepared a few slides. We submitted those. Hopefully you have them, but if not, Sammy will have them up on the big screen here in just a few seconds. So here's Sammy.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm sharing my screen and getting the presentation going, which of course means I can't see the Zoom. So do please let me know if you're seeing my my slides. Have they shown up yet?
No, you need to share.
Not yet.
Screen.
How about now?
Yeah, they're coming up now. There they are.
Okay. So again, thank you for.
You've got them in kind of the note version though, as opposed to a slideshow.
So we can see your notes, Sammy.
Oh, that's fine. Is that better?
No,
Same.
It's the same.
Same. Okay. Not sure how to. Apologize for the. Well, there's nothing secret in my notes, so hopefully you'll still be able to see what I'm trying to talk about. So basically, as we're here because we've had a vendor that was asking for some flexibility or some for us to examine the potential for food service to be provided in a way that meets their business needs, and we're coming back to you with some information around why we have our structure the way we currently do, and some things to consider. And the way we kind of are kind of looking at this conversation would be basically the occasional food preparation under the temporary rules, and then routine food preparation through the rest of the food code. And just as a perfect example, I found two images, one showing some folks at a farmer's market in, I think, North Carolina. And then also I did find an Olympia diner. So it's just because of the name, I like that. That's over in, I believe, New Hampshire. So these are the two kinds of operations in which food needs to be produced for the public. And our role is to make sure that all the food is safe, regardless of that production model. So again, all the food needs to be safe, and certainly the public's expectations. The food code does have essentially two sets of standards. One, the bulk of the food code sets up standards for brick and mortar types of operations, and then they also have a subset for temporary production of food. And then our permits kind of follow along with that separation of occasional versus routine food. And then our fees and our inspection processes are set up around those as well. The occasional food preparation is allowed under more flexible rules, and we compensate for the lack of facility and utilities and all that they have by increasing our review and our inspections of those temporary events. And so that's kind of a give and take of temporary events versus routine. State food code basically says that the temporary events, they're operating at a fixed location with a fixed menu, and fixed doesn't necessarily is not the only place that they go, but basically that when we have the conversation with them and we review that, we know where they're going to be and what they're going to make, and we do that review, and as long as the safety needs are met, we present them with a permit, and they do their food production. There are some limitations there where they talk about not operating more than 3 days a week at a fixed location, and talking with in conjunction with an approved recurring event such as a farmer's market, or things like that. And that approved term is where the local jurisdictions have some flexibility in what they consider to be approved. For us, we look at that approved thing to also include what we call a self event, such as a grocery store, like say Ralph's Safeway wants to do, sell hot chili peppers when those will come into season, and so they will put a booth outside and sell those as a product. But there's not really a public event per se. It's just the store doing that, or even say Spooner's wanting to sell product in front of a store. Again, that's more of a self event than a public event. That's kind of how we look at that. But we do provide the flexibility for a number of those events to occur, again, because they're very much in the same mode as a temporary permit at a public event, and it provides the community and the vendors with some flexibility around trying to provide food for the community. I know cost is always part of people's evaluations of their business plans and what will work for them. And so we have, if you look at under the temporary column, you can see that for low risk, which would be say hot dogs or providing coffee drinks or that kind of thing, it's $80 for a permit, which would cover a day or a weekend. Multiple temporary would allow them to be at multiple locations or events over the course of the year. High risk, which is pretty much anything else as far as hamburgers, chili, pulled pork, whatever other kind of products that they're willing to make. It's $165 or $485 for an annual permit. If you compare that to, say, a food establishment of, under 1,000 square feet, is at $590, And so not too dissimilar in the pricing of that. One of the significant differences between those two, though, is that the review that goes into reviewing a multiple temporary or a temporary is on par with that particular event, in that we're looking at, okay, if you're going to be here for a particular weekend, we're going to spend 15 to 30 minutes reviewing your application, having conversations with you about how that's going to work. And that's about the extent of the review process. And as opposed to if someone wants to propose to do a full commercial place, then we're going to generally spend 2 to 3 hours, including an extensive pre-opening inspection, to go through and make sure that's going to meet all of their needs. Again, recognizing that for the temporary thing, they're going to be making food for a day or two or thereabouts. For a food establishment, they're going to be making food year-round, and their facility and their equipment need to match that need. And so again, we have that separation of effort and fees that divide the occasional versus the routine food service. When with the temporary food establishment, we do have a reduced requirement, so they can use an insulated cooler and a bucket to have warm water and wash their hands, and have bins full of water to do warewashing, wash their utensils. They can have a cooler and ice for cold holding, and as long as they have some overhead protection, keep the birds out of their food, then they don't need walls, and it can be a very, very temporary setup. The downside to that is that every time that they set things up, they need to bring everything every time and put it all together. And then also the weather and the seasons have huge impacts. And they're just then limited also to the amount of water and wastewater that they can use and how they dispose of it, and just fewer supplies because everything that they bring to that site. When we look at a public event, they're usually an event coordinator that, say, like at Lake Fair, there is an organization that is providing the restrooms or the porta potties, that's providing garbage, access to potable water, a way to dispose properly of the wastewater, and those kinds of needs. And so if someone is setting up in front of a store, or the store is setting up in front of themselves, they're having to provide all of that infrastructure to support things. So when we look at these, whatever kind of proposals coming forward to say, hey, we want to make food for the public, we're looking at the public health risk. What are they trying to do? We're also looking at the cost to the applicant. Obviously that should be appropriate and commensurate with the amount of time it takes us to look at do the review, do the inspections. How much time and staff effort does that take? So on the department side, there's a fairness and equity level that we also always look at to try to make sure that we are not structured things so that we are putting someone at a disadvantage. There's also obviously the precedent about what we allow and what we've not allowed in the past, so that there's hopefully from our business partners that there is some continuity and consistency, so they know what to expect when they look to make a proposal. And then also obviously just the foundation of it all is the regulatory requirements, and in this case the state food code, that based on safe food and the science around that. So when we're looking at routine food inspection, generally that's comes with a fixed facility. Whether or not they own it, they lease it, it's borrowed. It's walls, floor, ceiling, refrigeration, electrical, plumbing, all that helps make the day in, day out food preparation safe. And a mobile food unit is very similar to that, except it's mobile, it's on wheels, but all those same things are part of that same package. And one of the things that we look forward to is when we're working with a fixed facility or a mobile unit, we know what to expect because that whole package is there. They're going to, parts of it aren't missing or are just not available for a particular event. They're just there all the time. And so that provides us with some confidence that the day in, day out preparation of that food will have that support of all that equipment and infrastructure. Cottage Food is also another place for people to make food and sell it to the public. And this was created a couple of years ago in response to the public's desire to have a better or kind of a lower barrier entry into making food. Those items can be made at home. Basically, the Washington State Department of Ag performs the review process, and they go and look at the kitchen, they look at the menu, and they're limited to relatively safe foods like baked goods, breads, cookies, cakes, jams, things like that. But it's definitely an option for a number of folks to make food, sell it directly to the public through state farmers markets or whatnot, and not necessarily have to hit that big cost barrier of creating their own storefront. We're here because we've had a vendor who raised some questions about, is there another way we can do this to, again, meet their business needs? And we're certainly welcome those conversations. And we try to be responsive to all of our partners. And so there's the changing needs of the industry. Like, for instance, right now there's a large push at the state and national level to reduce food waste so that we get more food into people, and so instead of throwing it away, which is great. And so partnering with the food banks and making adjustments to how we can and save food essentially, and put that to a better use instead of throwing it away. There's emerging challenges in public health, such as E. coli in vegetables and greens and spinach and whatnot, and how do we change some of our practices to require, for instance, spinach and other cut leafy greens that have to now be refrigerated. In the past, we didn't do that, but we now know that that can help reduce foodborne illness problems. We're also balancing those adjustments against, again, being consistent and stable in our business practices so that the industry understands our expectations and what they need to do to be safe, and our efforts to educate them on those needs so that we're all going down the same road towards good food produced safely and having happy customers that come back. And then, of course, the broader partner of the eating public that fully expect the ability to eat anywhere, eat from any location, and that's going to be a safe thing for them to do. And so, looking at all of those perspectives so that we can make adjustments, but also trying to keep in mind all these needs so that we end up with, we've got about 300,000, residents in the county. And I was thinking about it the other day and realizing that for the most part, we're, as a county, making 1 million meals a day, thereabouts, for people to consume. And the vast majority of that happens in a safe fashion. And a lot of that is based on the food code and the facilities and the equipment and whatnot that people bring to making food safe and their daily activities. And we're there to inspect facilities, either temporary or routine or the fixed locations, but we're there a small number of days out of the year. The rest of it is their day-to-day efforts and dedication to making good, safe food. And the more we can support those efforts with adequate facilities and equipment and procedures, then the better and easier they'll be able to, them and their staff, to do that, to make that good, safe food. So we have some kind of pathways to consider. There's right now, if we want to be real strict with the state food code, we could only allow public events or only temporary events that are public, and that's more restrictive than what we do now. And there are some counties that it has to be a public event, and they don't necessarily allow these self events. We'd go, and there's basically the pros and cons to that are that it is consistent with the food code, but it is restrictive. And we feel that there's a latitude, or adding a little bit of latitude to facilities is appropriate and something that we can do in a safe fashion. And so number two, that maintains status quo, which is we still have this separation between the occasional food service and routine food service. But we do allow the store to hold an anniversary sale, a grand opening, customer appreciation. Say a tap room wants to say, hey, we're going to release a new beer, and we want someone to sell some hamburgers in front of us. We can do that under our temporary rules and make that work as an occasional thing. If we look at, say, option 3, and we say, okay, well, right now we offer that as 4 times a year as a limit. Can we increase that to, say, 12 times? I'm just throwing that out as an example. There's that would come with an added need to do additional inspections, and we'd have to evaluate whether our fees currently support that, and we'd have to look at some of the impacts on that. And then there's, do we just approve any temporary event that anyone wants to apply for as option 4? So there'd be essentially no numerical limits on the number of events that someone wishes to do or kind of where they want to do it. That's kind of the wide open option. And obviously, as part of that, there would have to be a significant review and change to how we structure and both our fees and our processes, so that we can then compensate with more inspections and more review to balance that risk of moving from a relatively small number of, say, operation days to a large number, 100, 200, 300 days of operation. And how is that done on a safe fashion consistently to match the number of days that are being that they want to provide. And so these are kind of the options that we've looked at. And currently, the status quo option number 2 does provide, from our perspective, that clear separation between occasional and routine. The risks and the standards for both of those, to us, make a lot of sense and have a firm foundation in food safety. But certainly, again, we're welcome to have conversations with our vendors and try to meet their needs. But we also have to recognize that we have a wide variety of vendors and needs, and we still have a foundation of food code and food science that we need to follow for our eating public. And so we need to keep that all in balance as we look at what can we do, or where should we go with how we do our permit structures. And I feel like I rushed through all that, and I know that your time is valuable. So I hope that kind of gives you some background to this conversation. That we're again more than welcome. We do have this essentially all the time with all of our business operators, and trying to understand what they can do, how they can change their businesses, how they can take advantage of new trends and what the consumers want. And again, our response back to that generally is trying to see if we can make things work, but also trying to educate them and make sure that they are able to follow the foundational safety needs for the public that they're making the food for. So I hope that helps give you all some background and some perspective that we're coming from, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Art. Thank you, Sammy. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I would have felt a lot better about it if it would have said, well, let's expand it to 52 days out of the year or something like that. 12 days just doesn't cut it as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't even come close to what we need to do. But what I am wondering about, do we require pop-up food vendors to get a food handler permit?
Yes, anyone that's making food, either temporary or routine, does need to get at least one person within that group needs to have a food handler's permit.
Okay, so then we have an educated
provider, so to speak. And why not just let that educated provider do his thing, knowing what the rules are? We could have I don't know what your fees are, or you laid out some fees, but I would propose a very small fee. And then possibly that purveyor or provider of food product could call in and leave a message. Doesn't even have to talk to somebody at the health department. We're gonna be over at Bob Smith's brewery house this coming weekend. We're gonna sell hot dogs or whatever. And let's not try to micromanage these folks. Let's just allow them to maybe report where they're gonna be. Maybe you're gonna show up, maybe not. I guess 90% of the time you wouldn't. And allow the individual to be responsible and follow the rules of the information that they've obtained through getting a food handler's permit. That's quick comments. I know we're running out of time.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer? Or Sammy, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to, and just to put some context to that, the food workers training is approximately a half hour to 45 minutes of training. It really is the first step of what we look at as far as someone understanding what they need to do for food safety. And it is an important step, but primarily what we want out of that is for the operator to understand that, and hear the message that they should wash their hands, keep food hot, keep food cold. But it is that first step towards understanding what food safety needs are. And so the expectation generally is that, for most food employees, they're going to do that as part of the regulatory need, and then they're going to work for a facility that's going to provide much more in-depth training as far as how that all works. And like right now, if we have someone under a multiple temporary permit, and they can easily call us, email us, and update their itinerary and say, hey, yeah, we're going to be at this location or that location. The Tumwater 4th of July event just opened up and we're going to be there as well. So we can easily have those kind of conversations, but there still is an obligation on our part to review what they're doing. And to do that, we do need to understand, so what is your menu? And tell us how you're going to make that. Right now, our temporary application is basically 4 pages. Someone can fill it out easily in about 15 minutes and help us understand, are they, how we're going to do hot dogs. We're going to buy them from Costco. We're going to keep them in a cooler with ice. We're going to put them on a grill. We're going to serve them to the public. That gives us quite a bit of information to go off of and evaluate. Is this, are they going to be able to do this safely? What equipment are they going to use? And that's a big part of what we do to evaluate how they're going to make this work. But that expectation is definitely both on our part as well as on the public's part, that if someone's out there selling food, that there has been some level of review that things are going to be safe. And so, but as we move from, again, that occasional service of food to the 100 days a year, 200 days a year or more, then we do start requiring more infrastructure, more support through facilities or equipment, moving from a cooler to a refrigerator, moving from a bucket with water to something with plumbing, so that as they do that increase of occurrences, that the risk is not increasing because they're working off of pretty limited equipment.
Yeah, there are probably some other questions, Sammy, too. So,
sure, go ahead.
Commissioner Menzer?
So going back to the beginning, I don't really understand your first slide was about a WAC, defining a temporary food establishment and what state law. I don't understand the significance of that. The operations that we're trying to address don't even meet this definition. So what does that mean? They can't operate, or they're not subject to a whole other set of state rules because they're not a temporary food establishment? What is the meaning of that?
Let me try that one, Sammy, because that was my slide. The reason I put that in there is because there's been some discussion about whether permits are required and whether there should be what latitude we have for temporary food establishments.
Yeah.
And if you take the state law as it's written, there are some jurisdictions, as Sammy said, who wouldn't allow temporary food pop-up events because they don't meet that definition. They don't fit into the 21 days at one establishment, like at a fair, or they don't meet the 3 days per thing. And so we've attempted to provide latitude to allow pop-up events or self events that as Sammy's described them. And so that was just to let you know that if you want to be a very literal interpreter of the code, we've got problems, but we've tried to work to provide options. So that was the intent.
Well, is there a provision not on the slide that says you may only operate if you are a temporary food establishment subject to this definition? I mean, what is the impact of being a temporary food establishment under these WACs?
Sure, and I apologize for not making that clear. So the food code basically says you need to do all these things. You need to have plumbing, you need to have mechanical refrigeration, you need a full facility if you're going to provide food. And then it provides a separate section to say temporary food, which describes on that slide. You can have a lower standard. So they have a separate section of the code which does allow, you can use a cooler with ice. You can use an insulated igloo cooler to use water to wash your hands. You don't need a mop sink. You don't need all the things that would come with a brick and mortar. So the code is set up to provide that lower regulatory standard for temporary foods that meet that definition. And part of the keywords in that definition is approved, as far as approved events. And so that's where that allows the local jurisdiction some latitude to talk about where that, what is that line of what's an approved event, not just a public fair. And what we've looked at is allowing under that approved event a limited number of these self events to, again, provide some flexibility for the retail operators to not just be at a fair or a festival.
Okay, thank you. And then my other kind of big question is the number of events. You kind of got into it at the end when you said, well, the more events we're going to allow, then your equipment requirements go up. Because your slide about options, it's, like, okay, well, you can allow more events, but I've gotten into this with several of these pop-up providers, and they're further down in the weeds of saying, well, I'm supposed to be within, I'm supposed to have these 3 buckets or this kind of triple sink or whatever, but can't I be within 100 yards of that? Because I can always, if I need it, go into the, if you're out front of a brewery, I can always go in and kind of piggyback on the infrastructure of the associated business. I don't know, they were throwing all these ideas at me that frankly I didn't know how to make sense of because I didn't know what all the rules are. But I guess what I'm getting at is it seemed like their desired solutions were more complicated than just increasing the number of events. They wanted to get into these what you said at the end about how the more events, the more equipment requirements, and they wanted to get really down in the weeds of those requirements and try to make them more adaptable to the circumstances that they face. So,
right, and that's one thing that we would certainly welcome will be the conversations around what are you trying to do? How are you trying to do it? How frequently are you looking to do it? And then what are you supporting that with? From our perspective, for a perfect example, we have a Puget Sound tap room on College is a tap room. And we just discovered that they're working with another group to be Puget Sound Brews. The tap room doesn't open till 2. So now they have a coffee company that's going to come in and use their facility and in the morning serve coffee. And we're like, that's an awesome use of maximizing the number of people and businesses that can take advantage of a fixed location and of all the equipment and the plumbing and everything else that goes along with that. That's a great thing. And there are a number of other locations that are either, that don't operate on Mondays. And so they have someone that comes in on Mondays and makes food out of their kitchen. And we welcome those kind of synergies. If we do have a vendor that wants to do routine food service, though, we would really want them to be fully supported. And so not necessarily that they need their own separate dedicated space, but are there ways for them to work with existing spaces to make that work? For example, if we have a tap room, if we have a tap room that is only set up to serve beer, but they have the sinks to support other things, well, what would it take to add some food equipment that could then support a food vendor kind of sharing that space and sharing that opportunity. We're happy to have those conversations as well, but we do need to always match the menu and how they're trying to make the food with the things that are going to support it, the equipment and the facility.
Right, Sammy, but I think what Commissioner Menser was asking is, imagine that someone came and they're going to have a temporary food event and it's going to be in front of Microbrewery X.
Right.
Part of our review process would be we're going to find out about the venue, where they're going to be, and if they say, okay, what part of our plan is to, use the sink facilities here, and we've got this agreement with them or something. That's what we would discuss as part of the permitting process for that particular proposal, right? So we can consider those things, but they're on a case-by-case basis. They would need to come forward with that and say, here's what we want to do, and then we could figure out how to make it work.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Okay, so I do have a couple questions. And for me, I appreciated the wax because I always knew this was kind of like a parallel approach between what the county could do as well as what needed to change at the state level for it. And this was one of the issues I brought up at the Wausau LSC meeting. So Wausau could take it up as the lead. Apparently other counties are bringing this up as well. So this is going to be one of the issues that they're going to take up as a lead in terms of what they can do. And it was just not pop-ups, it included a wide array of things. Mm-hmm. For me, I do have a couple of questions. I'm concerned, and this wasn't something that but the 485, I know that's what Pat from Carbon Pop paid for 4 events. And that seemed really hefty to me, especially for someone who's operating a very small business at a small scale for 4 events. And summer tends to be, I guess, the busier months, right? Is there a way that we could have, summer permits, summer temporary permits and winter temporary permits? In the winter when things slows down, and the summer where things pick up? Because just a 485 fee for 4 events, it just seems really hefty. I mean, I'm looking at the other permits and, it seems one of the higher ones for someone who's operating at a smaller scale for a limited operation of hours. Right. And my next question is in terms of location. Some of these pop-ups are going to the same locations over and over again. They're not, right. It's usually they're hopping around through breweries. Is there a way where, if it's the same place that they're going to, that way public health doesn't have to go to them every time and instead go to a specific brewery and make sure that everything's set up for however the pop-ups need to come? And I don't know, I'm just trying to see if there are other avenues that can be taken.
Go
ahead.
I was going to say, Sammy and I have had some discussions about that, and I think the point you raised, Commissioner Mejia, is important. I think it's important to take a look at the different venues where they're going to be. And so if someone has a circuit where they're going between 4 or 5 microbreweries or tasting rooms, and we had a chance to look at those, then I think increasing the number of events that someone could go to, whether it's 12 or 20 or something, that would make sense. I think kind of catching things on the fly where someone says, oh, this week we're going to be someplace we've never been to before, that creates some concerns, and it also takes more time. But I think the point that you've made is a good one, and something we talked about is if it's a known facility, then providing, allowing someone to have more events that they go to, that makes sense. I think that's a reasonable compromise we could work on.
And then also the multiple, the fees for the multiple, that 485, again, is good for the calendar year and is good for whatever public events that they want to take advantage of. If they want to go to Lake Fair, it's part of that fee that they've already paid. If they want to go to Thurston County Fair, it's already part of that fee. If they want to go to various 4th of July events, all of that's already essentially paid for, and those public events are part of that package. The 4 event limitation is on these self events where they're on their own. But as part of that fee structure, we are also looking at being able to go to a public event, see a number of vendors, basically make some labor efficiencies on our part as far as where our staff goes for the various weekends and whatnot. As we get more individual events, then we'll have to make some adjustments to how much time we are able to go and the kind of some staffing needs around that, which we're happy to look at. But again, our current structure is set up for that vendor to be primarily involved with public events where we can save on those efficiencies. But also, if we've seen them once or twice before, and we're at the third event, we're there to see other vendors, but we can stop by, say, how's it going, make sure, just have a quick chat. Oh, they got everything they need. Good. I'm going to go inspect these other two I haven't seen yet. But we have that ability to make that touch in versus if they're all on their own and I have to send an inspector out to 10 different locations on the course of a weekend. That's just a lot more time and effort, which we can do certainly, but we need to then kind of restructure our staffing and our fees to support that.
I'm gonna say we don't need to inspect them every time. I'm gonna kick that.
Well, our inspections are part of our due diligence to making the food, to validating that the food is safe. The other part of that, though, is, and this is how the food code is structured, is that they are bringing with them all the equipment and needs to make food safely. And that's really what day in, day out makes the food safe. And so, yep.
So I think the board members have some other questions and comments. Okay. So
I can go on talking all day about this stuff. So yeah, please go ahead and jump in.
So I would like to see of the same locations option, right? Because I feel these food vendors are going to a lot of the same locations. Mm-hmm. And I think staff resources don't need to be used every time especially if they're going to the same locations, throughout the summer. I'm thinking also, again, having something in the summer that allows more events versus the winter where things kind of slow down. I mean, for a summer permit, let's say like $485, that would seem reasonable to me, but it just seems $485 for 4 events, really expensive, especially for, these small businesses who are operating under they operate for like 2 hours. And, I was speaking with the mayor of Dakota, who's having issues even like bringing food trucks down to their event in October. And he was looking at different options for vendors. And he was like, well, I want to bring food pop-up vendors here. But, it's, people don't want to keep paying every time $485. They, the restrictions are so tight, they feel under what they can operate that. I don't know if there's, what we can do to, instead of be a little bit more equitable in case of this. So I don't know. I just.
So I thought that, again, we had was, I think, so if what you're suggesting, Commissioner Mejia, I think is something, if we wanted to say, okay, if you are going to a set number of venues, in other words, set number of microbreweries or whatever it is, and we get a chance to look at them, then you can go there not maybe as many times as you want, but we could say, a multiple temporary food event, if they were very, very industrious and went to all the big community events that we have, and even the small ones, it's probably going to be 12 to 20 if someone was on top of everything. And so if we said, if we had, again, you could do 12 or 20, and as long as you're going to the same 4 or 5 venues, I think we could do something like that. That's, and it would allow us to inspect at least once at each of those venues. And then if things are going okay, then they could be on their own after that for the remainder of the permit year.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. County Manager?
Going back, and I think Commissioner Mejia, you raised the question, the temporary, multiple temporary permits, $485 versus $595 for the mobile. it is really the labor associated with the inspections, because on the temporary permits for events, and the for events varies on location and varies on the type, which requires that inspection. But I think the option of having, if you have a temporary permit for locations as opposed to for events, if those 4 locations are known, that individual can probably have events on one location 20 times during the year, and at the other location, I'm just exaggerating, another 20 times. So it's more it must focus on the location versus on the events, because they can have multiple events, and that will be something the board may want to explore really, and ask staff to further research on that, because the balance of this, I believe, is the obviously the economic development component of this, and this is a new way to all of us can enjoy this, but also striking the balance of public health, because you also have the obligation to protect the public who consumes the food, and that is also the balance.
Are all these rules that we're talking about the same rules that would apply to a social service club? Lions Club wants to sell hot dogs at Oregon
Yes.
Trail Days or something. Okay, I mean, because it's more than just economic development. I mean, they're trying to raise a few $100. If they raise those few $100, they then support activities that do a lot of good in the community that we don't have to pay for, So like the idea that we're benefiting by not letting, by having our fees so high that we can't allow a group like that to operate and do a little bit of fundraising, we're not benefiting the community, because they're going to give back multifold in terms of what they do with their money and their volunteers and everything else. So it's something to think about. It's not just promoting businesses, which is one good thing. I heard about this from the Lions Club. I mentioned the Lions Club because I heard about the Rainier Lions Club. Like $150, $165 means a third of what they're going to make in terms of some of the things that they do. And so it's just something to factor in. And public support is another thing too. I mean, if I add up the number of times that people said to me, boy, I wish they were selling food here, at this event, versus the number of times people said to me, gosh, why is the county letting them sell food at this event? It's 1,000 to 1.
Right.
So people support this activity. The public supports it. We don't throw safety out the window, but if it's spot inspections and we allocate a little more money to support that, as a kind of deterrent with education involved, anything that's creative, I'm supportive of.
Yeah.
True, and I totally agree with you, and that's part of why we have things structured the way we do, is that there is definitely a community desire to have food. Food is just a key component of a lot of different ways in which we operate and celebrate things and gather, but the underlying expectation is that, again, they're going to be able to buy their hot dog for $4 and not have any maybe a little gas later on, but not have any negative consequences of that $4 hot dog, which is fine, and that's part of what we're there to do. But we also have been set up as a fee recovery operation, and so we do need to cover our costs with how we do that process. So we are a little limited. We can't say, oh, you're a nonprofit, we're going to give you a fee break at this point. Or we can certainly explore some of those options.
But I think that historically, if you go back to 2008, before the recession, then there was actually a fair amount of discretionary money that went into the Food and Environmental Services program, and the permits were basically lower. In 1 year, because of the recession, we ended up having to increase fees by, I think it was 50%, right. Which was not fun to do. And so I think it gets, and Ramiro has mentioned this before, we've been directed a number of years ago to be 100% cost recovery on our permit activities, and our budget, until the foundational public health services money came into it, we were 98, 99% fee and grant revenue. It's a little, and I guess you can call FPHS a grant, but that gives us some discretionary funding to do things. But But we'd be happy to figure out, other counties actually look at things like community events and they reduce the fees. They say that, we're not going to require 100% cost recovery. Now they fund them in different ways. I could do research on that if you would like, but we'd be happy to reduce fees. I'd love to be able to do that, but I also need to be able to make sure that we're being responsible and making sure that our food service activities in the county are safe.
And that was discretionary money as in general fund.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
I could see us, I haven't heard any solutions today. And I will say that if we'd get off the public's back and try to make a point of doing 10% of, say, the pop-up inspections versus trying to do 100%. And let people know we're not doing it all. Follow the rules here, and we won't bother you too much. But I see this as a bureaucratic process that wants to be more bloated and more bloated and more bloated. It does not want to solve a problem for the community. And I don't think we need to have inspectors at every scene, every time, doing everything. So that's where I'm at. And I'm ready to vote on anything that's less restrictive if anybody wants to jump in on it with me.
Yeah, I was trying to summarize the conversation this morning, and thank you, Commissioner Edwards. That was, I think, your initial response to, I think you highlighted the, under the food handlers permit, just letting do those activities without necessarily a permit. Commissioner Mejia had some questions related to the 485 temporary permits for the 4 events. During that conversation, about if I look into the possibilities of looking at the events as opposed to specific for locations, as opposed to the events. If the 4 known locations are inspected under the same permit, they can have many different events within those locations. And I believe Commissioner Menser tries to strike a balance between some of the economic development benefits as well as just the nonprofits that perhaps they not necessarily have an economic development, but also have other values. So at this point, what I think the board would like to do is explore with all due respect, I'm just getting to the point of what Commissioner Mejia was looking at is within the temporary permits, what other flexibilities do we have in terms of the actual locations? And as opposed to concentrating just 4 events, it's 4 locations, and then they can have additional events within those locations. Is that what I'm reading? Because I
want it as liberal as possible.
So I'm trying to find out a way to move forward on this conversation.
I don't want to inspect lemonade stands and cookie sales from cheerleader groups.
And I believe you have been very clear on that.
Sammy, how many inspections, what's the rate of inspection right now? Commissioner Edwards said 10%, not all of them. Are you doing every single stand, every single time, and every single event?
No. So, for instance, and because of COVID, I went back to 2019 as a more normal year. We did approximately 350 temporary inspections. And so, like, for instance, if you look at, say, Lake Fair, that operated for, was it 6 days? I think we had something like 40 food vendors there. We did 1 inspection on opening day for all those food vendors. And then that was it for that site unless there was anything to follow up with corrective actions. If someone has a multiple, we're looking to inspect them 2 or 3 times per annual. And so, we're not doing every booth every time because some of those, we are able to look at a facility, we're able to look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, the equipment they're bringing, and strike that balance of chain. Okay, you guys know what you're doing. You're professionals. This is working great. We'll see you 2 months from now. And again, whatever events they choose to sign up for, we keep track of that just so we can know who's where and what they're doing. But we don't need to see them all the time.
How many applicants do you have in a year?
I'm sorry?
How many applicants, like approved permits, like per vendor, do you have in a year?
I don't have that handy, I can get that information for you, but it's.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like if you, I don't know what the number is, 200 different people?
We probably, like, I think what might be a better number to look at is how many event days did we have for the year versus how many inspections did we do?
I think Commissioner Menser was asking how many different permits did we issue, because I think he then wants to relate that to the 385 inspections that we performed.
Right. And I don't have the number on hand right now. I can easily get that. But
I was just curious about if you were to say, you know, no matter, if you get a permit, you're probably going to get inspected once a year. And we sort of make that a target, like each applicant that gets permit, you know, whether they're doing, you're going to get, we're going to look at you once in a year.
Right.
So expect that. And so that kind of cuts down. And I just wonder, would that be a reduction in the volume of the load from where you were before? Or is that what you were kind of doing before? Kind of hitting every vendor once a year in some location that they're at?
Some vendors are only going to do one event in the county, so we're only going to look at them once. Other vendors, and again, we've got that multiple package, that bundle with the multiple. So if they're doing more than 3 events in the course of a calendar year, they're going to go with that and save themselves some money. And we're going to see them 2, maybe 3 times that year inspection-wise. And they may be there for 5 inspections or 5 events, a dozen events. It just depends on what the calendar that they put together. And so but again, the rate of inspections is balanced against the limited equipment and facilities that they bring with them to make the food. And so that's how that works. And again, if we're looking at a fixed facility, they've got the plumbing, the electrical, all the infrastructure that goes with that day to day. So then we can not spend as much time with them because we know that they have all these other things that help make the food safe. And if it's a temporary event, then they're limited to what they bring.
I mean, I would support less inspection, more events. I don't know exactly what those numbers ought to be, but I think that if you knew you were going to get inspected once a year, you'd follow the rules, because you never know when that's coming, and you're not just going to go, oh, we got inspected, so now let's just scrap everything like the next event. You know, it's just not going to happen.
Can we add this to our planning? So I'm looking at the time and we have an executive session coming up, and I feel there's still a little bit more questions and more things. I don't know, I would like to see a little bit more proposals from public health. I'm not sure if that can be brought to our planning session.
The planning session is packed.
I know it is.
So, and then you're gonna run into the same, so what I will probably work with staff is actually setting up a briefing for an hour, and that will give enough time, maybe in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
And you know, Commissioner Edwards raised a proposal, and let me see if I can verbalize yours, is to eliminate all the inspections. So I just want to be respectful that is a proposal, and
I'm not saying eliminate all, but I'm talking about getting rid of the damn most of them.
Okay, I wouldn't be able to do that. And I hear from the other 2 board members, they would like to maybe a little more detailed information about the proposal as to how we can move forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, because for me, it's the 485 for 4 events, right? That's like one piece of it, like where it's kind of restraining. And, you know, I was hoping for a little bit more, and Commissioner Edwards brought this up, more of a, okay, this is kind of the track that we are allowed to take. Commissioner Menser asked some really good questions about like the amount of inspections, like do we have to have, you know, all, you know, does this specifically party have to be inspected multiple times?
So I will organize with staff a follow-up briefing.
And I would like it sooner rather than later.
They're gonna go broke by the time we get this figured out.
Yeah,
We'll shoot for the next 2 weeks.
2 weeks seems like a little bit too far out for me as well.
Well, your schedules are tight.
I know.
So we'll do our best to make it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Okay, we have an executive session, but I would like to bring up an issue for other commissioner items. Is there any other emergency items that the commissioners would like to bring?
I'm gonna defer to the chair.
Commissioner Menser?
I got one, but I'm gonna let
Thank
you
you.
go
I'll
first.
be working with Sammy to prepare some.
See if I
Yeah,
can
thank
find
you.
mine.
Mine is hopefully very quick. Just with, this is on our planning session this Friday. It's in regards to the infant formula. I was just hoping to get some authority from the board because I would like to work on some proposals with staff, specifically Gretchen and a little bit, and some other members from public health. We are planning to talk about this at Partners, but there are some things that I believe the county can do. I just need that kind of authority to be able to direct some of the public health staff members to assist me with this. So I wanted that authority from the board to, so I could be able to do this.
What is it about?
The infant formula shortage.
Okay. Whatever you
So-
come up with.
Good.
Great.
When is your meeting?
So the partners meeting is on Thursday, but I will hopefully, since I've been granted authority, I'll be reaching out to some public health staff today. Thank you. Okay, go ahead. It was really quick.
I'm gonna defer, I think mine's not appropriate for this particular time and place, so I'll wait.
Okay. Okay, how long is our executive session?
Should only take 15 minutes.
Okay, so we should be.
Where's, hopefully Josh is listening and he can join. He's a key part of this.
Okay, so we're gonna contact Joshua?
Yes, I'm texting right now.
Does goat's milk all around?
I don't know.
I mean, it's used all over the world.
It is, like for creams and.
All kinds of stuff.
Have you already announced the?
No, I
Oh, I
haven't.
thought we were just
Okay,
waiting
so
for
it's still
Josh.
next
Yeah, I thought we were waiting for Joshua. We're talking about.
Solutions.
Okay, so we will be in executive session per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1B to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause the likelihood of increased price, Violet Prairie HCP land acquisition. Commissioners' action may follow. We will be in executive session until 12:15.
Thank you.
You're live. Okay, and so we are back from executive session. It is 12:18. We were in executive session for RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1B to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price. Violet Prairie HCP land acquisition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, I would ask the board to provide direction for staff to take the next steps on this acquisition to enter into a purchase and sale agreement.
And that, I might follow up on that. That's gonna help us solve this whole HCP problem for the community.
Absolutely, that's a great first step.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
There you go.
Okay, 1 thumb up, 2 thumbs up, 3 thumbs up.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, with that, it is 12:19. Any item that commissioners want to bring up at this time? No? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.